Too close.
Yeah.
You don't have?
You cancel schools.
You have on your phone? What are you doing? If Yosef shows up, I saw him walking around, so I'll give you news. Okay, we're in Daled, where the Rebbe has softened the blow and taught us that when we say that the Ruach Shtus is mechasel, the Nefesh Habahamis, that the Ruach Shtus covers up the Nefesh Habahamis, that's only the midas of the Nefesh Habahamis, but not the etzem of the Nefesh Habahamis. That's the language of the Rebbe. What does that mean? That means the aspects of the soul that are clothed in the body are affected by what we do. The aspects of the soul that are transcendent of the body, specifically etzem and the neshama, is not affected what we do. Ratzon is affected. The ratzon of the neshama has an opposing force in the ratzon of the nefesh habahamis, so it can be affected by the nefesh habahamis being allowed to express its ratzon. But the essence, the essential connection of the yid to the Eibishter is not affected by the aveira done down here. It's also not affected by the mitzvah that's done down here. And it is what it is, an essential state of reality. The Moshel and Gashmias, as close as we can get, is DNA, right? That if someone has DNA for blonde hair, and they dye their hair black for 40 years, so the DNA doesn't change. DNA is the same. Okay, so that was our mashal yesterday, right? So what's karis? Karis is cutting it in half. That's why a person will be sensitive to that, right? And so what does the Aveira do? The last line we saw yesterday, what does the Aveira do? Third line, second line on page 117. Your Aveiras separate between you and your God. And what's Elokechem? The Elokechem perish Elika Shalachem. Your Elokus. Hainu, what? Ha-Elokus Shabbat. What does Aveira do? An Aveira doesn't separate us from the Eibishter. An Aveira separates us from ourselves. It separates us from that aspect of ourselves that is essentially connected to the Eibishter. Vinyanim elu, and these aveiros that the Rebbe was talking at the bottom of the page about non-belief or isurei kares, most chamur aveiros. Vinyanim elu harehim noigim b'chlolos iskashus. They affect the essential connection to the Eibishter. Again, the essential connection of the neshama here to the essence of the neshama. V'yadua dal etzem and neshama, relative to etzem and neshama, ein shum davar hamayli b'masti. There's nothing that conceals, nothing that hides, nothing that opposes. There's no aspect of etzem of the nefesh habahamis that is an opposing force to the etzem of the nefesh halukis. Ulazois, and therefore, kashabah is a davar, when something comes, a negeya b'chlolos iskashus nafshe, which affects his the essential connection of his soul to the Eibishter. Again, the Rebbe is not talking about disconnecting etzem from the Eibishter, chas v'shalom, but rather disconnecting the rest of the soul from the essence of the soul. And that would be a very serious aveira. Sheyochel liyos nifrad al yedei zeh mi elokus chas v'shalom, that a person, by virtue of this behavior, again, we're talking about the most chamur of aveiros, Yisurei Kodesh, Yisur Shabbos, eating on Yom Kippur, eating chametz on Pesach, the canal, the Ish Yisrael, and as we said earlier in the Maimer, Ish Yisrael ain't a reitza b'shum ofen. A person doesn't, a healthy Jew is how we explained it when we saw it the first time. This comes up in Chassidus all the time. And when you look around in the world, you might not understand. You might look around and say, this doesn't seem to be the case. There seem to be all sorts of Jews who aren't necessarily interested in a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. A healthy neshama is interested in a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'ena reitza b'shum ofen, and doesn't want in any way, ve'ena yochel, and isn't able chas v'shalom lipared me'elokus, to be separate from elokus in a state of health. Again, we'll define the neshama in terms of its state of health, just like we'll define a heart, and we're not relative to a healthy heart, not a diseased heart. V'lochein nirgesh etzlei davar zeh. Therefore, what will a person be sensitive to? A person will be sensitive to such serious aveiros. So we talked about this yesterday outside, now we're seeing it inside. if the neshama is literally cut in two, so you have to be very insensitive not to be sensitive to that. Now, it's theoretically possible to be that insensitive, okay, but in a normal situation, a Jew won't do that. In normal situations, a Jew is brought up a certain way, and things are going relatively well. Okay, is the person going to have issues? Yeah, the person will have issues. Are they going to completely disconnect themselves from the Eibishter? Generally not. Aval b'sharei averos chas v'shalom, but other averos, and again we talked about this also yesterday. Other averos, she'einim b'kados, that aren't, the punishment is not kados, therefore the spiritual effect is not as serious and not as extreme. Harem nimim pratim. So what are they? They're the individual strands of the rope. The rope has 613 strands, and these are individual strands of that rope. What happens? He doesn't feel it so much. Now we talked about this yesterday. It's like taking a razor blade and nicking at the rope. So it's one little strand. There's 613 strands in that rope. That mitzvah is that one little strand of the rope. He might not be sensitive to that. Right? So, it's Gimel, the Rebbe explained to us, again, we talked about this earlier, the psychology of why a person might do an favor. What does he convince himself? He convinces himself that he's not separate from the Eibishter as a result of this Aveda. He's still a from Yid. Okay. In chapter Daled, what's the Rebbe telling us about? What's the metaphysical reality of that? Not the psychology, but what's happening on the level of the neshama, such that a person isn't sensitive to it. Just a little nick. So a person might not be so sensitive. It takes actually a tremendous amount of work to develop that sensitivity. So you might not feel it so much. And even though when he transgresses one of the mitzvahs of Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded him to do, and he doesn't do it. I mean, he's over a love. Nasa. He doesn't do a positive commandment. Misses Kriyishma. Or he does one of the mitzvahs Savaya. Asher Tziva Havaya, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded Levilti Lasoisan not to do them, meaning he transgressed the negative commandment. What happens? Mitzad the Neshama. Nifsak anima pratis. It's cut. That avenue of his relationship with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is contained in the Neshama, as we learned yesterday, is cut. So that avenue of his connection to the Eibishter is, so to speak, closed off at this point. The befratze, in this part, harikol ha'atzmu shel ha'pratze, the whole essence of this detail, of this particular aspect of his relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. He's cut that, meaning that level has been cut, so to speak. Karas is cutting the whole rope. Each individual aveira, meaning serious aveiras, cut the whole rope. That's why the Jew doesn't do that. The firm Jew doesn't do those aveiras. What aveiras might he fall prey to? The ones with little nicks in the neshama that he might not be sensitive to. But what happens? So that avenue of his relationship with the Eibishter is impaired, and that aspect of his soul is impaired. It's not a healthy thing, but it's a lack of health that might not be so serious ad kidei kach that he's sensitive to it. V'oid yeser, furthermore, but this nick, what does it do? Shepeil chalishus b'chlalas hachevel. This brings about a certain weakness in the rope. Now you might not be sensitive to that weakness either because it's just one little nick, but enough of those little nicks so then the whole rope is now less strong. Right? The mushal, it's not brought here, but the mushal is always brought. And consider this about the body. If one limb in the body is weak, so that weakens the whole body. A person has a problem with their kidney. Right? The kidney is one thing. But that affects the whole body. Right? The problem with the kidney will affect the whole body. Even something as small as a broken finger right? So a person could, God forbid, break their finger. Okay, so that'll affect them. The pain of the finger will affect them, and that'll affect their ability to do all sorts of things, right? They'll be aware of that broken finger until that bandage is taken off, as small as that finger is. It's going to affect everything going on in their life for a while, right? Every time they want to eat, they're going to have to worry about, how do I wash my hands with this stupid finger? Right? Every morning they go, so what am I supposed to do with this stupid finger? How do I get it out of the way? Okay. The smallest thing affects. Right? Ingrown toenails. Ingrown toenails can destroy a person's can destroy a person's week, right? He can't function. Wait, is it your toe? What's the big deal? Settle down. It can be very uncomfortable, and then it's harder to concentrate because it hurts. Okay. So too in Ruchnius, that's what the Rebbe is saying. An ingrown toenail. Right. To be avoided. Just cut your nails longer. Nevertheless, hine, liyoisam, the fact that they are, liyotam, right, to be them, meaning the fact that they are, rak nimim pratim, only individual strands, doesn't feel it so much. Right? Even the ingrown toenail, it might hurt, but there'll be times when he forgets about it. He's not going to forget about a knife in his back. That you don't forget about. Right? But, an ingrown toenail, okay, it hurts now. There'll be a time during the day when he completely forgets about it, okay? Because it's something smaller. So it could be in Ruchnius that a person doesn't feel the pain caused by this Aveira. The pain caused to the neshama, because I can't imagine having a razor blade come, the conceptual razor blade coming and slicing the neshama is a particularly pleasant experience for the neshama. But the nefesh habahamis might not feel it, v'hainu, or be aware of it. V'hainu shebezeh hine amidos the nefesh habahamis. This is when the midos of the nefesh habahamis ma'limim umastirim. They hide and conceal all the midos the nefesh elokis, certain aspects of the nefesh elokis. That's how it happens in Ruchnius. In Gashmius, the Rebbe described the psychology of it, the nice gimel. Here, the Rebbe is talking about the Ruchnius, like what happened. It's actually happening on the spiritual level when a person does an Aveira. If I'm not overly sensitive to godly vitality and godly light, then I won't be very sensitive to the lack thereof. This is again what the Rebbe talked about in Gimel. Now the Rebbe is talking about it from a different point of view in Dalet. And this is the reason that a person could come to an Aveira. The Sitra back to explain the whole thing. This is the summation of the whole discussion on Ruach Shtus, because we're with the Ruach Shtus to Klipa, because we started talking about Ruach Shtus. We said there's Ruach Shtus of Klipa, which you guys said very, very properly that means there's also Ruach Shtus of Kedusha. Yes, there is. That's true. We're going to learn about it in Ois Hey. We'll be there in a minute. And that's how you build the Beis HaMikdash. Shtus to Kedusha. I know Ruach Shtus the Sitra Achashim Mechasu Mailim Ha'er. Spirit of folly that conceals the truth. She'ein nirgesh etzlo Ha'er Eloki. He doesn't feel the godly light. And why doesn't he feel the Ruach Shtus? The Ruach Shtus somehow convinces him that he should be more sensitive to other things. Whatever those things might be. Right? Things that they eat and things that they do, and often we can become very sensitive, overly sensitive to what people say to us, as opposed to sensitive to things that are more important to be sensitive to, like what we say to other people, and how we relate to the Eibishter, and how we relate to Elamazon. And what can happen? A person can descend heaven for fen midechi el dechi. Dechi is a place that's pushed off, abandoned, from low place to low place. Until he can actually do something against the will of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Where does that come from? It's all the ruach shtus. The shtus the klip. Right? Mitzad the nefesh elokis, none of this is going to happen. Even mitzad the nefesh bahamis, none of it can happen unless the nefesh bahamis has the ability to cover up the nefesh elokis. Right? If the nefesh bahamis were less powerful than the nefesh elokis, so less powerful that it couldn't affect it in any way, shape, or form, even the midas of the nefesh elokis, so then you'd never do an avera. That doesn't mean you might not have some desire to do something, but it would be very, very easy to just have a desire to jump out of a building to see what it feels like to fly. Well, you probably overcome that pretty simply. Right? It's not like a big deal.
What is this Reish Lamed?
Reish Lamed? Rachmana litzlan. Heaven forfend.
Heaven forfend.
Heaven forfend. Like God forbid. Like chas v'shalom. Only. Take this. You're making me nervous.
Rabbi.
Oh, Ifei, look at what happened. God's a funny guy sometimes, What?
There's a thing in psychology called the call of the void, which basically refers to the phenomena where people have non-suicidal urges to jump off things because they're curious about what it's like to jump off tall things.
Right.
So
but they usually
they
overcome for that. Overcome that. I want to fly. Okay, shtus the kedusha. You made it to shtus the kedusha. Shtus the klipa tears out your kishkas. I mean, you see, the Frierdiker Rebbe can do that. He's good at that. Okay, before we see what you say, let's go through Kitzurim again. From Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet. Kitzur and Aleph. Iker Shechina B'Tachtonim. We're going to Wednesday. So after Marav, after Shachris, and after Mincha, we're going to Chazer this Maimon. Someone will say it. Al Peh. Not word for word, just general ideas. If you want to be one of those people, talk to Rabbi Yichchak. If you don't want to be one of those people, avoid Rabbi Yichchak. He's looking for people, I know. It's a big excuse to do. The essence of the divine presence in the lower realms is Ois Aleph, Yavar, the Kavanas B'riyas Eilemus, the intention of the creation of the world, that there should be a dwelling place in the lower realms. How do we do that? That the taiva was that this dwelling place should be brought about by our Veda, and that's brought about al yedei iskafir v'yishavcha, shemam shichor sevev shezeh b'chul amim b'shava. 2 hours exactly. I have to do that breath test that I didn't do last time. I have to do it this morning at 10 o'clock. And I'm not allowed to drink coffee. It's really, and she says an hour, but some other people say 2 hours. So if it's 8 o'clock, I finished my coffee. I'm okay.
Don't be too lenient.
What? If you look online, it says 2 hours. It's interesting. Sometimes this is just something interesting to check
Which
out.
breath test, Robbie? You're testing your VO2 max, or
My what?
what type of breath test are you doing?
I'm doing a test to see if I have a chaydak in my stomach.
That was not sports related.
Not VO2.
No, I mean,
VO2 max is the test the amount of oxygen your lungs can.
yeah.
Like your exertion levels, you won't mask all over. That's a difficult test.
No, I'm just blowing into something in there. If there's a chaydak down there, so it's at a certain age. It's when you get blood tests, you often get that too.
Doing your physical, it's like that wide pipe that you blow.
I did it once. I don't remember. I'll see. I'll tell you. I'll tell you later in the morning what it was. I don't remember. I did it 2 months ago. I just don't remember because they were doing so many tests at that point. So I don't remember. Okay. Which means Gemara class, if they're late there, I'll be late. But if not, you saw I got that pretty quickly. They were very on time. The Kavan is B'riyas Eilim Shiyah Dir B'Tachtenim Shnat Zaydi Iskafi V'Safik Shemaim Shechar Seivev Shezeh B'Chul Amim B'Shav. Right? Seivev, which is brought down in the world, right? Kadiskafia Sitra. If someone were to ask you, which they might, Kadiskafia Sitra Achri, Stalakir Kutikuchibriku B'chul Almin, it goes out the glory of the Kodesh Baruch Hu in all the worlds. That's not what it means. What does it mean? Kadiskafia, if you were to explain that statement, which is the first chapter, it means that when you subdue the Sitra Achri, it goes out the light that exists in all of the worlds equally, i.e. Soivek. Does not mean the light goes into all the worlds. It means the light that is in all the worlds equally goes out, is revealed. That's what it means, okay? If someone were to ask you, and someone might, because you might just get a piece of paper in a week with 5 or 6 questions on the Maimer Bosi leGani.
Rabbi, that's the Iker Shechina?
What?
That's the Iker Shechina?
Oh, say
Can you
it.
repeat that
No,
one time?
Iker Shechina is higher than Sefer.
What is the Iker Shechina?
I told
Before
you,
Simcha.
learn the Rebbe's Maimer Tafshin Yud Aleph. The Rebbe's first Maimer, the beginning of the Maimer, the Rebbe, it's not easy, but it explains Iker Shechina. You don't understand it per se, but you can come with a piece of what's it. But learn the beginning, learn the first couple of issues of our Rebbe's first Maimer. He explains what Iker Shechina is. He explains it based on all of the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, the Middle Rebbe, the Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe Shem, which is what the Rebbe goes through. All 5. He's learning a Maimer of the Rebbe Rayatz, right? So he goes through 5 Rebbeim 3 times. The 3rd time he brings the Rebbe Rayatz, because the 3rd time he tells stories of the Avos Yisrael of the Rebbeim in the first Maimer. But it's so interesting. We'll make sure you understand. It's nothing new. It's just a continuation of everything that's been. Quotes the Alter Rebbe, the Bittul Rebbe, the Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Shem, the Alter Rebbe. It's very interesting. And also this, Chava, also the Rebbe goes through all the Rebbe. Generally how the Rebbe says, Bosi leGani, my man, generally the Rebbe will quote all of the Rebbe in the course of the Maimer.
Can you repeat one more time about the Sefer? I didn't understand.
About what?
About when you do it, it reveals it in all the world equally, like it.
It doesn't reveal it in all the world. It reveals the light that exists in all of the worlds equally, i.e. Sovev Kolomi.
It reveals it in this world. Like that.
Reveals it, yeah. Down here. What is that? The Ratzon of the Eibishter. Sovev. Yeah? Okay. Kitzer base. Yevar. HaKarbonis Ba'avodah. Explain the meaning of Karbonis. The Adam Ki Yakriv. Tzarech Lias Mikem Korban. Person who might even be asked about that pasuk and to explain that pasuk on a piece of paper. I know this is scandalous to actually ask you to remember what we learned in a Maimer, but I am going to give you a piece of paper at the end of this Maimer and ask you, without the Maimer in front of you, to do your best to answer those questions. Because if you know the Maimer, you can, because none of them are tricky. None.
This is before or after the Hazar?
After. I'll even give you, if you want, I'll give you 2 days to chazar the whole Maimer. But I want you to know the Maimer. This is a Maimer you have to know. You have to know every Maimer we learn, but this is a Maimer you really have to know. It's Bosi leGani. Right? The Rebbe explained this Maimer over 40 times. I guess the Rebbe thinks it's an important Maimer for us to know.
This was his mission statement?
This is the Friedrich Rebbe's mission statement, absolutely. Friedrich Rebbe is telling our generation, okay, here. This is what you have to know. What do you have to know? It's all about the B'tachtonim. How do you do it? Well, we'll see. I say, shtus to kedusha. That's how you do it. You get annoyed at people who might have a little shtus to kedusha. Go with them to the Friedrich Rebbe and see who wins. Lubavitch is not middle class. Nice little middle class. Everything's fine, and we don't push any buttons and don't bother anybody and don't. You're just not middle class. It's just the way it is. Bourgeois. Okay. We look middle class with our suits and ties. But I had a friend, Nebuch. Unfortunately, he ended his own life. But he was a wonderful, wonderful person. And did it at about 22, 23. But he was an incredible artist, and he wrote, I'd say, I must have it somewhere. I'm sure there's some little notebook that he never threw out. That he drew a picture of the sun setting over mountains with a lake. It was beautiful.
and above it, he'd be laugh at me now. And above it said, "Don't like them suits and ties. Don't seem to harmonize." That was a very 60s statement. Harmonize. Don't like them suits and ties. Just don't seem to harmonize. Why do we wear ties around here? There's two rabbis that you have. Rabbi Shem Tov and Rabbi Gestemp, that's a different issue. Rabbi Vichten and I, why do we wear ties? Years and years ago, 35 years ago. So we opened a yeshiva here for Baalei Tshuva. It's the only time the Rebbe ever gave a bracha for yeshiva for Baalei Tshuva in Yerushalayim. So there were three of us involved in that. And hopefully Mayanot is the continuation of that bracha. It certainly seems to be because it's full of bracha. The seventh group that asked, 6 other groups that asked, and the Rebbe didn't let them open up a yeshiva for Baalei Tshuva in Yerushalayim for whatever reason. So Rabbi Vichnen's father, Olav Shalom, was the Rosh Yeshiva in Morristown in those days. So I was pretty stupid, but I wasn't so stupid that I didn't go ask advice from someone older than me who had been doing this. I was pretty stupid, but at Baruch Hashem, I wasn't that stupid. So I used to go, and every time I'd be in America, I'd go for Breng in Morristown, and I'd sit with Rabbi Vichnen's father and, get some pointers on how to, because I was almost convinced that I knew everything, but not quite, Baruch Hashem. So one of the things I remember walking in, I didn't have a tie, I didn't wear a tie. So I walked in and Rabbi Vichten said, "Baruch, where's your tie?" I said, "I don't wear a tie." He said, "You should wear a tie." I said, "Why should I wear a tie? Don't like them suits and ties, just don't seem to harmonize. Why should I wear a tie?" I didn't say that to Rabbi Vichten. I was wearing a suit, right? I said, why? So he said a great line. Americans think rabbis wear ties. Wear a tie. Now that might not be the case anymore. I'm not sure. It's certainly American. On campus, find a rabbi with a tie. I mean, no way. I find a rabbi with a suit. No way, right? Find a rabbi with a shirt. Even that'll be like right? I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm on YouTube. So, right? So, but in those days, it was certainly the case. Right? There was no such thing as a rabbi without a tie. So he said. So I remember when Rabbi Vichten came to work here. So he didn't wear a tie. So Rabbi Shem Tov told him, "We'd like you to wear a tie." He says, "I don't wear a tie." He said, "Go talk to Kaplan." So he came up to me and said, "Rabbi Shem Tov sent me to you." I said, "Why?" "Something about a tie." So I said, I think I know why. I told him the story about his father. I've never seen Rabbi Vichten around here without a tie since I told him that story about his father. As soon as he heard his father say he should wear a tie, there's a tie. When you see Rabbi Vichten out in the streets, he's not left off wearing a tie. When he's here, he's wearing a tie. This first thing I do when I get home is I take this thing off. Right? And I have a little hook in it. It goes in the hook. When I go teach the Lubavitcher girls in the afternoon, in the evenings, I don't wear a tie. Lubavitcher girls don't think rabbis necessarily wear ties. Though I was sitting with his friend and my friend Ruvain Flamer. This was years ago. This was 35 years ago. We're sitting in 770. The Rebbe had Farbrengen. It was a summer. The Rebbe had finished Farbrengen. We're sitting in 770. We don't want to leave, and we're soaking up and we're Farbrengen, the two of us, and he's wearing a tie, and he's looking very fancy. So I said, "No, Ruvain, you and your tie, it's too much." So he said, "I don't know. The rabbi in this synagogue wears a tie." Because you couldn't see it, but I mean, under the beard, the Rebbe always has a tie, right? There's a black tie. The Rebbe always has a black tie. And sometimes in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe will go like this. Sometimes you'll see the Rebbe fiddle with his tie. Very rarely. There's always a tie. Always.
How come that everybody's trying to imitate as much as they can the Rebbe, but with the tie they are like so flexible?
Look, some people wear the tie. They wear a black tie. Some people don't. I don't know. When the Hasidim used to try to, the Bachrim would do things that the Rebbe did.
So the Rebbitzin would say, I don't know, it's a famous, there's one famous time where the Rebbitzin was talking to some Bachur, and they were wearing their hat the way the Rebbe was wearing his hat, and they were doing their shoes the way the Rebbe wore his shoes, and whatever. So she said to them, if you want to be like your husband, maybe you should worry a little less about your hat and a little less about your shoes, and worry a little more about not sleeping and learning Torah all day. Then you'll be like my husband. So, this tie, it's true. Once I put on a tie, I put on a black one because the Rebbe wears a black one, but I wasn't wearing a tie, right? Rabbi Vichnan Senior, Olav Shalom, was an absolutely wonderful man. So he's responsible for the tie. It's his fault. Right? Americans think rabbis wear ties. Okay, so. And now I don't know what people from Hungary think, but he told me Americans, because it is true. He was saying, most of the people you're going to run into are Americans. He also told us something that wasn't true, Baruch Hashem. He said, you'll never have more than 25 Bachrim, which was a nice bracha. I said, why are you giving me such a beautiful bracha? That's very nice. I appreciate that. He said, because
Never have more than 25?
you'll never have more. You'll always be small. Now, in those days, there were more Balei Tshuva sitting and learning in Yerushalayim in those days than there are now. Right? Or Sameach probably had 100. Eshet Torah probably had 100. Rabbi Bravender and probably had 100 in those days. Mechon Meir had the Israelis, but also probably 30, 40 Americans. There were less places, but more Bachrim sitting and learning. So he said, you'll never have more than 25. So I thanked him for the bracha and asked him why. So he said something fascinating. But Baruch Hashem, I think we're proving him wrong here in Mayanot, but it's taken 35 years. That he said, a Lubavitch Balchuva Yeshiva, you're going to ask much more from every Bacher than they're going to ask in Eshet Torah and Sameach, and it'll be easier to do it there than do it by you. And most people aren't going to go for that. They'll just go there. You're going to have to ask Panemius. That's what he said. Which is interesting. He said it's going to be harder. I do remember a conversation. It was a heavy conversation. A guy who got frum in Chabad House in Bosi University with Rabbi Posner. His brother went to Eshet Torah, so when he came to Eretz Yisrael, he went to Eshet Torah, but he and I were very close, and he used to show up to every Farbrengen. In those days, we used to Farbrengen in the old city a lot, because all the action was in the old city. Now it's not, but in those days, the Americans hanging around, they were all hanging around the old city. So we used to Farbrengen in the old city every couple of months, and everybody would show up. So the Bachrim from Eshet Torah would also show up. Now Eshet Torah doesn't have very many Balei Tshuva anymore, but in those days they had a lot, and they would show up to the Farbrengens. So Yud Beis Tammuz one year for Brand. He used to come to every Farbrengen. So 2 stories about it. Great kid. I wonder what happened to him. He's a really nice kid. But one Farbrengen, it was Yud Beis Tammuz. So the Bachrim from Eshet Torah were educated properly, kol hakavod, I must say, that they would not leave when the rabbi was speaking. I don't know how they learned that so fast, but they wouldn't walk out of the room when you were speaking. Okay. But, there's nigunim, and then you speak. So they would come in for a nigun and sing, and then listen to the rabbi talk, and then leave during the next nigun, right? And there would be 50, 60 guys in the course of the evening who would come in and go out. So Yud Beis Tammuz one year, I don't know what possessed me, but I decided, no nigunim, I'm just going to talk for 2 hours. So these poor guys were held captive in there. There were like 60 of them at the same time. They were all in there, right, for about 2.5 hours. What do you talk about in Yud Beis Tammuz? Mesiras Nefesh. What are you going to talk about on Yud Beis Tammuz? Mesiras Nefesh. So I talked about Mesiras Nefesh for a few hours, and he came up to me. I forget his name. He said, such a nice kid. He really was a beautiful guy. He came up and he said, everything you said is true. This is after already he'd been there about 1.5 years. Everything you said is true, but it's too hard. And I know that if I sit and learn Gemara, I'm doing what God wants and I'm safe. He actually said what Rabbi Kaplan told me. So it's all true, but it's just too hard. But I know if I'm sitting learning Gemara, I'm okay. I'm covered. Okay. The next time we Farbrengen in the old city, he showed up like at 11 o'clock at night, ran in, said, I'm sorry I didn't come to Farbrengen, but now I'm a masmid, which means I'm a person who learns Torah all day long, and I don't stop learning, so I didn't have time to come, but I just finished at 11, so I came to say a quick hello because I knew you were here. That was the last time I saw him. Sweet kid. Really good guy. What are you gonna do? Gimel. Yivar the Ruach Shtus, take it for Taiva of Nefesh Bahamis Bechlal, the Ruach Shtus, which is the Taiva of the Nefesh Bahamis in general, well, the Taiva and the Nefesh Bahamis in general, Mechasim ala emes, cover up the truth. V'germim heder v'hergish elokus, and they cause a lack of hergish, of godliness, v'ilu mitzvahs, and the beauty of mitzvahs. And they also cause a lack of sensitivity to Hisus, the lowliness of a richuk mehem, distance from godliness and mitzvahs, right? Which we learned in Gimel, right? That if I'm not sensitive to the beauty of the mitzvah, so then I'm not going to be particularly sensitive to the lack thereof. Right? If I don't feel the elokus in a mitzvah, I'm not going to feel that it's missing in another realm. Dalet, which we just finished, Yamshich, the Ruach Shtus, this is the shortest one. If you want a chaz or a chapter, this is the shortest. Yamshich, the Ruach Shtus, Machasa Rakala Mides, the Nefesh Elokis, continues and explains that which we said in Ice Gimel, that the Ruach Shtus covers up, the Ruach Shtus of the Nefesh Bahamis covers up the Nefesh Elokis, that's only the Mides of the Nefesh Elokis, that aspect of the Nefesh Elokis clothed in the body, V'loi al atzmusei ve'etzem iskashus, and not on the essence of the Nefesh Elokis and the essential connection of the Nefesh Elokis to the Eibishter. V'hine. 10 minutes. Kishem sheyesh hataya lamata mina das. Just like there is a turning away below das, Ruach Shtus, of Klipa. Right? Because what was Shita? Hataya, turning away, right? That's what the Rebbe did. The first thing the Rebbe told us in Gimel was the word, the meaning of the word. Shunik Rebbe Shtus de Klipa, and that's called Shtus de Klipa. And in case you forgot, right, the Rebbe reminds us in the first line, Hine Kamechen, just similarly, Baruch Hashem, Yeshna Tayla Maila Mina Das. There can be a turning away from intellect that is beyond intellect, not below it, but beyond it. Super rational, not irrational. Vahu Shtus de Kedusha. Shtus de Kedusha. And what's the ultimate expression of Shtus de Kedusha? So the Rebbe brings the famous Gemara in Ksuvas. Ketzed Maraktin Lifnei Akala. How do you dance in front of the Kala? Va'inyan hu dehine Amri Razal Ksuvas Yud Zayin Amar Aleph Amri Alav al Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Eloi, who was a Tana. They say about Rabbi Yehuda b'Rabbi Eloi, Shayanetel Bas. How did he dance in front of the Kala? Shayanetel Bas Shel Hadas. He would take a sprig of a Hadas, right? One Hadas, that you put in a lulav. One Hadas. Umbaraked Lifnei Kala, and he'd wave it around and he'd dance in front of the Kala. But he's not the hero of the story. The hero of the story is Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Right? Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak was an Amora. Right? But he was Maraked Atlas. He would dance with 3. So Rashi explains, Sholosh Batim. He had 3 sprigs of Hadassim. And what would he do? Zorek achas u'makabel achas. He'd throw one and catch one. In other words,
Juggling.
he would juggle. He'd juggle Hadassim. Now that's not so easy because juggling light things is harder than juggling things with a regular weight, right? So he would juggle Hadassim. Rav Zeder was not so happy. Amr Rabbi Zeder, Rav Zeder, because this was in Bavel, Mistama. Right, so he's still Rav Zeder. Amr Rav Zeder, kamachsif lan Saba. You're embarrassing us, Saba, old man, grandpa. Shemazal, it's not a derogatory term. And Rashi explains, Shemazalzel bekavod talmidei chachamim. You're cheapening the honor of Torah scholars by dancing in front of a kala. So how old is the kala? 15, right? In what? 19 in Bavel? Probably not, right? 15, right? So he's dancing in front of this young 15-year-old girl, juggling Hadassim. So Rav Zeh was not happy with this at all.
said you're mezalzel Talmidei Chachamim v'noig kalis reish bas, when you're acting in a lightheaded way. Rashi on the Gemara. Oh, but what happened? Kinach nafshe, when he passed away, when Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak passed away, well, obviously he was older than Rav Zera. How do you know he was older than Rav Zera? Called him Saba, Yafeh, right? When he passed away, Amuda de Nerda, Afsik, it separated. Amuda de Nerda, a pillar of fire, literally, a pillar of fire separated Bain Didei, between the body of Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, which they're carrying to the kever, L'chule Alma, to the whole people, to all of the people who were at the Levaya. There was a pillar of fire. There was a miracle at his Levaya. Amar Rabbi Zera, this was there at the Levaya. What did he realize? Rav Zera realized he was wrong, and Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak was right. Ahani le. Now there's going to be three different expressions of the same word, shita. Three different expressions. We're not sure which one he said. Amar Rav Zera, ahani le. It was good to him. It was beneficial to him, like hana. Hana is when you get benefit from something. Birchas hana, the brachas you make before you eat. Right? So ahani le. It was good to him. Shoite l'saba. A shoit is a sprig, a little stick, a twig. Shoit shel hadas, the sprig of hadas. Shayim maraked bay, that he would dance with. Rashi says that's shoite l'saba. His shoit was good. In other words, why was he zeicher to this miracle? Because of how he acted at the weddings. Va'amri, there are those that say he didn't say shoite, he said shtus l'saba. Dafke his shtus. Shayim isnag kishaita, they acted like a shaita. Rashi says at the chasnas. Va'amri, there's a third shita as to what he said. Shitse l'saba, his shita, shitasei min hagei, the way he acted. Right? But all of them based on the word shita, it's all the same. Exactly which of these three different expressions of shita Rabbi Zera said is not clear, but they're all the same word. The shtus zu, this shtus of Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, harihu l'mayla min hadas. It's a very, very holy level. Shumadrega gavaya v'nifla b'ma'ed ma'ed. This is a level that's high and wondrous, very, very, right? Very high, very wondrous, amazing level of connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, to get beyond das, beyond intellect. He touched a place beyond intellect. Why dafke a chasna? The ish ve'isha, a chasna is an ish and a isha getting married. What are ish and isha all about? Hare zochu, if they merit, hare shchina shrui b'neiim. The shchina rests between them. Why? The ish, the word ish is what? The word eish with a yud. Eish, Yud. And what's Isha? Eish, K. The Eish of K. Right? A Kasher Zochu. And when they merit, this is a medrash, when they merit, Az Hare Hem Yud K. They are the Eish of Yud K. That was the fire that separated between him and everybody else. The Eish of Yud K. The fire of Yud K. And it comes in a revealed way in an everlasting edifice, that their house is a house that lasts and is full of varmkeit and simcha. Right? So that's when they merit. The Gemara goes on and talks about the fact that if chas v'shalom they don't merit, then it can be a very, very difficult place. It can be an all-consuming fire. But obviously, marriage is a very, 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 very powerful thing. Either very powerful positively, or it can chas v'shalom be something very powerful negatively. It doesn't work. So if they merit, then it's an Eish Yud K. And who was privy to that Eish? Who saw that Eish at the chuppah? Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak. So he danced when he saw this level. He was sensitive to this incredible level of godliness happening at the chuppah, which is completely l'mayla mitam v'das, completely beyond human intellect. Human intellect doesn't see that. He saw that and danced in accordance, reached a state of shtus to kedusha. Rav Zera was upset until the funeral. When he was at the funeral at the Levaya of Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, he realized what level he'd really reached when he saw that fire, because he realized the fire was the Eish of Yud K, of the Ish and the Isha being bound into one. The Im Kain, how does Emadrega Gved? This is a very high level. Lochein bishvil zeh. Therefore, as a result of this, Zocha, he merited legiluyim nailim b'yeser. he merited, Rav Shmuel by Rav Yitzchak at his Levaya, very lofty revelations. Then what happened? The fire was revealed to everybody. The Afsik Amuda Denara. There was this fire separating him from everybody else. And the fire represented the separation of where he was holding to where everybody else was holding. Everybody else was holding on one side of the fire. They couldn't see it. He was on the other side of the fire. He was, so to speak, above it. You could see it. Even when he was walking around. Shazel Bechinas Gilui Or Begilui Mamish. Amazing line. There's a period there, so we'll stop there, but we're going to explain that line first. That's an amazing line, which might help you understand things that you don't understand. Because very often when we talk about Gilui Or, we're not talking about a state of Gilui where you can actually see it. It's there, you just don't necessarily see it. You brought about a Gilui of Ein Sev, of Or Sevev every time you're doing a Iskafi. Do I see the Or Sevev? I don't see the Or Sevev. It's too powerful to be clothed in Kalim. That's the difference between Sevev and Mamali. So why is that called Gilui? So here, you notice the Rebbe says there's two levels of Gilui. There's Gilui, and then there's Gilui Mamish. But Gilui Or, but Gilui Mamish. Could Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak have brought down into this world a very powerful level of godly reality? Could he reveal in this world a very powerful level of godly reality? Yes. Could it necessarily be in a state that's not Begilui Mamish? Yeah. Meaning no one else would see it. Maybe he even wouldn't see it, but that level of godliness would be brought down into the world and would affect the world positively. Not that guy see it. Right? Here, the Rebbe says, isn't it interesting? Gilui Or Begilui Mamish. Well, what other kind of Gilui is there if it's not Gilui Mamish? Oh, there's Lav Dafka, a state of real Gilui. Right? Meaning Gilui that other people can see. That doesn't mean it's not here. It doesn't mean you haven't brought about an increase in godly light in the world, but it's not necessarily an increase that people can see with their physical eyes. That's called Gilui Mamish. Here you're seeing Gilui Mamish. Everybody saw the fire. So how does that work? Well, now that there's modern technology, it's easier to understand. We've talked about this before. What's this room full of? Radio waves, Wi-Fi, all sorts of chazarah in this room, right? Where are they coming from? Well, someone's being megala them. They don't just show up, right? Someone's been megala. All those hundreds of different people are being megala radio waves into this room. Are they in this room? Absolutely. I'm dating myself. If you're finding it on your phone, you're not picking up the radio waves. You're doing the Wi-Fi waves. That's different. Pick up a transistor radio and turn it on. Move the dial. You'll hear all sorts of nonsense on that dial. Where is that? Well, there's all these radio waves floating around here. Are they making us glow in the dark? I'm not sure, but whatever. They're all over the place. Right? Okay. Why don't I see them or hear them, since they're not something I'm not a kli for that. I'm not a kli for radio waves. Right? I mean, maybe we are in a way we don't want to be, but we're not a kli for radio waves in the way you're supposed to be. We can't sit there and go, and all of a sudden play Rashid bait. That won't happen. Right? There was always a joke that if you had the right kind of cavity, when they used to be made out of metal, so you could pick up radio stations and they'd come out your mouth, but it didn't work that way. Right? Since you're not a kli for that, or that someone's being megala in this room, so you don't see it. But that doesn't mean it's not begilui here. It is begilui here, just not begilui mamish. But it is begilui. Someone's megala all those radio waves in this room, or Wi-Fi, or whatever it happens to be. Right? I mean, there's also, I guess, television waves here. Right? If you had one of those televisions with an antenna, you could turn it on and pick up something. Right? Okay, so it's all in here. Just don't pick it up. Well, I'm not a kli for that. Okay, what about godly reality? Okay, when you do a positive thing, which we're all sitting here and doing, we're sitting here and learning Torah, so we're bringing about a revelation of incredible godly light in this room. Are we aware of it? No. Are we megalit by virtue of what we're doing? Yes. Right. If we have a taiva to leave the room and I overcome the taiva and sit and learn anyway, so what am I megalit? I'm just revealing sevev. I have a taiva to look away from the book and I don't. I follow along. Okay, same thing. Okay. So do I see it? I don't see it, but it's here.
That's Gilui. So it's so interesting, the line, Gilui but Gilui Mamish. Remember that line when you're wondering, what does it mean, Gilui? Because Gilui does not necessarily mean that it's in a revealed state, lezulas, to the other. But that doesn't mean it's not in a state of revelation. It is revealed, just not necessarily to the other, but it's in a state of revelation. You might say, well, isn't revelation by definition to the other? Well, not necessarily. It depends who the other is. Might there be people who walk in the room and are privy to incredibly powerful godly light? Yeah. The Baal Shem Tov once walked into a beis medrash. He was traveling with some Talmidim. Walked into a beis medrash, and he said, "No, we can't daven in there," and he left. So they said, "Why not?" He said, "Because it's too full of Torah."
Too full of Torah?
Torah. So the Hasidim really didn't understand that line of so full of Torah is not a good place. And the Baal Shem Tov explained to them. Now they didn't know this, but the Baal Shem Tov is the Baal Shem Tov. What did the Baal Shem Tov say?
No wings?
The Baal Shem Tov said, if you learn Torah shaloi lishma, if you learn Torah for self-aggrandizement, so it doesn't go up. The Torah that's being learned in this room is all still in the room. It's not going anywhere. It's not going up to where it's supposed to go. If you learn Torah with the right understanding, this is God's Torah and I'm learning it for Him, so then the Torah is elevated to a higher level. If I'm learning the Torah for my own self-aggrandizement, that I'll be smart or holy, so then the Torah doesn't go up. He said, there's too much Torah in this room. We can't daven in this room. This Torah is not going anywhere.
Wow.
Now, you have to be the Baal Shem Tov to be sensitive to that. Right? You and I would walk in the room and go, wow, look what's going on in here. And there's something good going on, but not as good as it should be. Okay. Tomorrow we'll have class. We'll see as far as, I'd love to finish. I don't think we're going to finish tomorrow, but you never know. And I would say probably Wednesday is a good day for review because some of you might be in I'd like to finish the mimer and then do a review, but it might be that you're for bringing Tuesday night. Thursday is not going to be a shiur because